All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you!
This is my boomstick!
What's your favorite scary movie?
What up, horror heads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And sorry we missed everybody last week. Literally 5 minutes before we went to record, I started puking. Don't know why. I was fine the next day. Everything's good. We're back now. And if you're a regular of the show, then you're aware of the fact that Dave and I are school teachers, and we are deep in the trenches of the end of the year. So what better movie to really celebrate what it's like to be a teacher than the 2000 masterpiece? Look, I'm not going to bury the lead on this one. Masterpiece from Japan called Battle Royale. So we're going to get into it. This is a movie that I have loved for close to 20 years now, if not right at 20 years. But Dave, this is your first viewing. So in a section called Now Where Have I Seen This Before? Tell us what you think about Battle Royale, Dave.
All right. So I am going to be, I think, not as glowing about this as you are.
Fair.
This is my first time watching the movie. And I will say this at the top. This is one of the best made horror movies I think we've ever had on the show. This looks like it was made for $1 billion.
Yeah.
The special effects are top notch, and that's not even what I care about. This movie is shot perfectly. This is one of the best shot movies I think I've ever seen. Every single shot is fucking art. It is beautiful. The lighting is beautiful. The lens choice is beautiful. The film stock is beautiful. It is just outstanding. There is no one who can talk about this movie and say anything about the filmmaking of this movie. And when we get to that section here, I'm basically just gonna come all over this thing.
Fantastic.
It's amazing. All right. I will say this, though. I don't know what I was expecting, because this movie has been a cult classic basically
since America discovered what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a great thing, right? This movie comes out in 2000 in Japan, and it doesn't come out in America until 2012. That's a really huge span of time. And so for those people that are in the JDM and they're finding this stuff well before it's available over here, they know all about this thing. I don't think this movie is unique. I think that its premise has been done before, because I know everyone says, oh, it's, Hunger Games stole from this thing. Yes, it did. But that's not what I mean when I say, now, where have I seen this before? This movie is Death Race.
Yes, it is.
It is Death Race, and I don't necessarily know that I prefer it to Death Race, and I know that we're not comparing it to Death Race. And I don't know that its social commentary is as good as Death Race either. And I think that's where my biggest contention with this movie lies. I love this movie. I really, really, really love this movie. It's not going to get a perfect score from me, but what I do know is that I need to watch this movie again.
Yeah. So at the top there, I said I've been a fan of this movie for close to, if not 20 years. Dave said, it was released in America in 2012. Let me, so rewinding here to the early 2000s, I had an era where I got super obsessed with Asian horror. It came from after I saw The Ring, and then I found out about Ringu, and I watched it. Mm-hmm. And so in the early days of eBay, I used to import these movies from Japan and Korea. So I have a coded version of this on DVD. Like I had to also on eBay buy a foreign DVD player so that I could, because my PlayStation 2 would not play these movies that I was bringing in from Japan and Korea. So I have had this thing on DVD forever. It was funny because to watch it now, like I couldn't find, like my DVDs were still packed away somewhere. So I just went on Amazon and got it. And it's like, I kind of wish there was a remaster, but then at the same time, I'm glad there wasn't. I enjoyed seeing it in the exact same way. There is now the death race comparison, 100% valid. All right. I get that. One of my favorite things about this movie is while there is like a little bump at the beginning, kind of explaining why the Battle Royale Act is put into place. My favorite thing about this movie is really just like, man, 14-year-olds are dickheads. What if there were less of them? And that is honestly like what it comes down to. Like the little bump doesn't say anything about like trying to control overpopulation. It really is just like, yo, the teenagers are kind of out of control, so we need less of them. So, but we don't want to kill them, right? Because we're not the bad guys, so we don't want to kill them. So we're gonna let them kill each other.
They're killing society. Why don't they kill themselves instead?
Right. And so it really is just like, yo, kids this age fucking suck. Like it would be okay if we got rid of like 19 to 23 of them once a year, you know? And just as a premise, I think that's hilarious because kids that age suck. But I 100% agree with you about how beautiful this thing is. Yeah, the commentary is light, right? Like I feel like that might be something that's a little lost in translation with some of the things we see about
that had
students. I do feel like there are some societal issues that kind of line up more with what life is like in Japan or was like 25 years ago versus, you know, what we would be thinking of as we see it. But man, this movie is it is unabashedly violent, and it is, and it is
in a great way.
Yes. And it's the actors and actresses are just, you know, actors in it. I think they do a fantastic job. We get some really great performances here. We get a couple of super memorable characters. I mean, a great little ending. Yeah, like I said, not burying the lead on this one. I love this movie, and I'm so glad we finally got to do it. And I'm so glad to hear you say one of the best horror movies that we've done, because there was a part of me that was like, man, I really hope Dave doesn't watch this and be like, but it's not like quite horror, right? Like maybe it's horrific at parts, because I can see there being an argument here for this being more of like an action thriller type thing. But I think that this firmly falls into the horror category. So I'm so glad to hear that you liked it, because this is one I've been excited for a little while.
I think that there are, and I'm going to use this term. It's a term I use every now and then. And every time I use it, it is meant to be derogatory. So I just want to be clear on that, right? There's a lot of fucking nerds out there. All right. And as a nerd, I try not to be a gatekeeping nerd. All right. The last thing you want to do is be like, well, actually, this isn't horror because blah, 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 blah. I'm not listening to you. All right. I am going to stop listening to you when you say that this thing isn't horror because it didn't scare me. Right. Now, I think that we have to accept that when something is commenting on a horrific situation, when something is attempting to say something about society, even if what we are as the audience seeing is not blood and gore, even if it's not death left and right, even if the thing doesn't take place at night, all of these things, like to sublimate horror to one kind of thing to one time of day, to one time of year, to an amount of violence, all of that, I think, is to do horror a disservice. Horror is anything that scares you. And I can tell you that if I was living in that society, I would be absolutely horrified, terrified. I'd be scared for my own well-being, the well-being as a teacher. I would be scared of the well-being of my students. I would be scared of the my son's about to turn 11. He's getting close to that age. What if his class ends up being the next one, right? So all of those things are things that to me are scary. And I think that to anyone, those things are scary. And if it doesn't scare you, that's fine. Horror is very personal, and horror is the kind of thing that, maybe you're afraid of crocodiles, but I'm not afraid of crocodiles. Does that mean that crocodiles aren't scary? I think that that is part of this sort of nerd mentality where it's like, well, actually, blah, blah, blah. I don't like that. All right. This is a horror movie, and you can either accept that and keep listening or not accept that and stop listening. We are inclusive here. All right. And if someone says this is horror, it's horror.
Yeah, absolutely. So totally right. I mean, I agree. So let's go ahead and get into our next section. So in a section that we're calling "It's a Game to the Death," let's talk about, I mean, like, what happens in this movie, right? Like we keep kind of just leaning in on how good it is, but like let's talk about how it plays out.
This is truthfully the only area where I have an issue with this movie, because there's not much of a story here. All right. You kind of, the premise is the story, right? You talked about how it's like, hey, there's this new law that's been signed into act here in Japan. If you are of this age, you are likely to get signed up for this game show, right? I do really love that, because that premise really reminds me of all of those like science fiction dystopian movies from the 70s, right? Like your Soylent Greens, your Logan's Run, your Westworlds, right? Stuff like that, where it's like, is there a lot of stuff wrong with society? I don't know. What I know is that they're showing me this thing, and this thing is real fucked up, right? And maybe it's just that one thing that's different from our own society, but it's allowing me to focus on that one issue. So there isn't really much of a story here. There's these, 40, right? There's these 40 students. Yeah. And 42. They are 42, thank you. And they're taken to an island where they are going to fight to the death. That's it. My issue with this movie is two things that kind of like interact to become one thing. This is rife for the social commentary. There is some. I would even argue that there's a lot of social commentary here, because the more I think about this movie, the more I like this movie. What I will say is that this movie is way too long for the amount of story and commentary that's in it. And that is really, if I was to say that's my one issue, it's two things, right? It's the runtime and the commentary. But if the runtime was lower, if it was an hour and a half instead of like over 2 hours, right, I would be okay with it. If there was more social commentary, I'd be okay with the runtime. So it's kind of like these two things that like I feel like the balance is never struck. And it could be that there's stuff lost in translation. That's one of the reasons I really want to watch this again. I was looking forward to having another week to doing this. When you told me like, dude, I am violently throwing up
Yeah.
There was a small part in me where I was like, fuck, yes, I get to watch this thing again. And then I was like, no, my friend's feeling bad. I probably shouldn't be like excited about this. And I wasn't able to watch it again. But I do really want to watch it again. What surprised me is I was thinking, all right, I'm going to have a whole week to think about this thing. And I found I didn't really think about it too much.
Right.
And I think that a lot of that has to do with the small amount of commentary that's actually in this movie. I think the premise is very much like that is loaded with social commentary. How little do we think of this specific age group, right? The adolescent. How little do we help them? We put all the blame of society on them, right? Think about it today, right? It's the TikTok generation, it's the iPad generation, it's all that stuff. And for you and me, right? It was you're the participation trophy generation. It's like, but I didn't ask for a fucking participation trophy. You gave me the participation trophy. And by the way, I didn't get a participation trophy because the only fucking thing I did was fucking martial arts, and I was a badass. All right. So I fucking played. So don't tell me that I am the participation trophy person. All right. It's always the older generation that looks down on the younger generation. I think that we should tell more horror stories like that. I just think that they don't really tell a horror story about that. They say it's going to be about that, and then we see a bunch of teenagers killing themselves.
Right.
With not enough of the commentary in there. That's what I think. I love the characters. I think they're very, very well defined. I really don't mind that some of them are caricatures. I think that when you have 42 of them, some of them have to be caricatures. I think that the acting, for as much as I can understand, was great.
Yeah.
I have like nothing bad to say about this movie, except that it is either too long or doesn't have enough social commentary. And you fix one of those two things, and you fix my only issue with this movie.
Yeah. So this movie, like this was recommended to me by a friend, like I said, when I started to get into these things. And so I got it and really didn't know what to expect. And so I got this and I watched it, and I do think that part of what sticks with me so much is kind of those rose-colored glasses, right? Of like when I watched this. When I watched this in the early 2000s, it was like at the time it was like, man, this is like nothing I've ever seen. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so like and so while now comparatively, like I can see where the commentary is light, and I'm older now, and I do want to see more of those things. I found myself still looking at it through these like 19, 20-year-old eyes, right? Where it was just like, oh,
it's impossible to do. You cannot remove nostalgia from the equation.
And so I'm good with that. I could see it being, I do think the runtime is a bit much. Like there's a lot of downtime here with some of the things that make it beautiful, some of those weird dream sequences and stuff that make it so gorgeous. Like some of those things, again, maybe it's an American culture thing where this dream sequence doesn't really quite mean to us what they want it to mean, right? Because you're watching this and you're like, why is this girl like having a dream about eating ice cream with her teacher or whatever? You know, like that stuff all gets super funky when you're in there. What I love about this story is that just the way that this movie plays out is I love that while there is kind of a clear protagonist in Nanahara, I'm attempting to pronounce here, right? There is kind of a clear protagonist.
That sounds like the translation that I heard.
Right. There's this clear protagonist, right? Like he's the one who keeps things in motion, but he's not our only point of view character. And I think that is a genius directive move when it comes to this movie, because we've got a whole island. We've got 42 people, and we managed to tell a couple of people's stories very, very well. And I love the way that they do that. When we'll get to characters, so let me save that. But I love that they kind of jump around and you're never quite sure exactly what all's going on. But then they have that plot device of the speaker coming over and constantly naming, who's died, and the script that pops up on the screen that tells you numbers 38, 37, and 36 down. Here are their names, like that stuff that keeps it flowing, even though we're jumping from person to person. I think that that's great. Man, some of the super like just ridiculous things in this movie, the fact that there's a group of kids who are like, just so happens I was working on the world's best hacking program ever.
Yeah.
Like some of that shit is so outlandish and ridiculous. And then he's just got this list of, I live in a fully populated city. And if one of my buddies was like, I need this much ammonia, fertilizer, XYZ, I wouldn't know where to go. And I live in a town that's not far from farms. Like I should like it seems like these things shouldn't be hard for me to get my hands on. I'd have no idea. But you're going to tell me that like these kids just plop down in the middle of an island who are from, like random Japanese city, let's call it Tokyo. Like right. They're just like, oh, I know where to find all this stuff. And look, I found this truck. While part of that is ridiculous, there's also part of it that's like, it doesn't fucking matter, right? Like they did tell us that there was never an uninhabited island. Like they literally tell us, no, like people used to live here. We just ran them off because we needed this for our death game. So it's not completely outside the realm of possibility. But I love that none of that stuff seemed too outlandish for them as they were making this movie, right? It's like, yeah, no, this kid has a book from his grandfather that taught him how to make a bomb. And he got to bring it with him because it was in his backpack. He carries it all the time. You know
what it reminds me of is it's very, very manga.
Yeah, exactly.
And I what little I know about Japanese culture is that manga's ubiquitous. Like everyone reads manga. It's not the entire culture. Like I had some cousins that went to Japan for their 15th birthday. Their parents told them like, hey, what do you want to do? Like almost like a sweet 16 thing. Like Cubans, we have the quinces. So they were like, we don't want to party. We want to go to Japan. Like they are really, really, really into manga and anime. And they were very let down when they got to Japan that it wasn't all manga and anime. But that's like coming to the United States and thinking that everything's going to be football all the time.
Right.
Or everything is going to be Disney all the time. And
Disney's trying.
Disney's trying, and the NFL sure is trying. But there's more to life here than football in Disney World, So but that's what it reminded me of is it's very, very manga. I haven't read much, but what manga I have read is very much like that.
Yeah. And so I like that stuff is great. I think there are some things that are very some stylistic choices in this that seem very knowledgeable and respectful of the culture of films that have come before it. I mean, that first time that they explode one of the necklaces, like you can't tell me there's not a Kurosawa blood spray, right? Like,
yeah.
That
I mean, like,
amazing. Yeah, and it's like it happens. It's just like yeah, okay, I see you. Like that's great, right? Like these homages, these things like this. One thing that's amazing about this movie is when you sit down at the end of it and you really think about the timeline. All of this took place in 3 days.
Yeah.
In 3 days, they went from gassing these kids on a bus and getting them to an island to just, look, we're going to assume that if you're listening, we spoil things, to surviving at the end, right? So it just all for everything that does happen in this movie, like the idea of it happening in 3 days would not be possible without this narrative, or well, I mean, it wouldn't be possible to tell that whole story without this narrative element of jumping around the point of view. So I love that. I love the idea of occasionally getting a little bit of backstory from somebody without a lot of explanation as to why we're getting it in this moment, or like it just kind of like randomly they're like, oh, by the way, here's why they are the way they are.
I fuck with that. I love that.
Like when we find out about Mitsuko's background, where her mom basically sold her to a pedo and she killed him, and it just comes out of nowhere, and it happens, and the shock value of that moment after you've been watching her be an insane badass throughout this movie is so cool, because it's
I
not
think
like
there's not enough of that.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I think for 2 hours long, we could have gotten more backstory. We could have gotten a little flashback from the guy who builds the bomb, and his grandfather giving him this book, maybe explaining why he always carried it with him. Like, doesn't seem like something you need in your backpack on a normal school field trip, right? But he just happened to have it. So some of that stuff, I think, maybe could have been done just this much better. But man, like, the idea that everybody gets a random bag and you just got to live with what's in it. Like, everybody, gets a flashlight and a map and a compass, which, by the way, man, like that is a part of this movie that has not aged or does not translate American. Japan usually technologically ahead of us. You can't convince me for a second that in the year of our Lord 2025, a group of 14-year-olds can do shit with a map and a grid.
They wouldn't know what to do with it.
They'd have no idea, right? Like, every kid I know who's learned to drive in the past 10 years
just
can't
GPS.
go anywhere without their GPS. It's like, you've been going to so-and-so's, you've been going to your buddy's house your entire life. Now you need your GPS to make sure you make it on time, like, or that you go the right way. It's the same route you've always taken. Now you're just driving it.
So back in the day, right? Like, we knew how to use maps. And I know that we have like a great disparity, or a great range, let's say, in our audience, right? There's people who are quite young, there's people who are older, right? I think you and I, Daniel, we kind of like split the difference, right? Even video games back in the day included this bullshit.
Yeah, it's just a whole ass map.
Fucking maps. All right. We all knew how to use maps.
Yeah. No waypoints. No, you are here.
Nothing. No, it's just like, where am I? Well, I'm here. How do I know? Because I know.
Yeah, I see that castle.
That farmhouse there. Like, that's it. That's how we knew. And when you didn't know how to get somewhere, you know what you did? You bought a map. You bought an atlas, right? There were road maps, right? Like, I remember taking road trips and having to buy maps of this specific part.
Yeah.
This region right here. That's it. That's the map that I just bought.
Yeah, give me. I need the Rand McNally that's got Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi.
Dude, I was watching that and I was thinking, like, this would never fly today.
Yeah, no.
It would never fly. That one kid that got the GPS, it's like he's the only one surviving. He's the only one surviving.
Yeah, but so I love that, and I love that there's this idea that it's this complete and total crapshoot unless you're one of the two guys who are older and have done this before. It's just a complete and totally randomized thing. So, our two main characters get a pair of binoculars and a pot lid. And at one point, having a pair of binoculars and a pot lid is what saves their lives, because Kawada deems them not a threat. So he's like, whatever. What are you gonna do with those, right? I got no reason to kill you right now. And so we see these things. I love that aspect of it. I think that that's great. I think that one of the most powerful things about this movie, and like so that part's funny. That part's funny. Let me get into something serious because I don't understand segue. I think that one of the most powerful parts of this movie is that there are a couple of these kids who decide to take their own lives because they can't handle it. They don't want to be killed. They don't want to kill their friends, whatever. And I think that the way that that's handled in this movie is done remarkably well. Like there, with the exception of like the characters that are certifiable dickheads, they're never, these characters that take their own lives, they're never shit on in the movie, right? There's a reverence for the fact that, you know, maybe that they didn't want to participate. They're going out on their own terms. And like, I mean, because it is not long into this movie before we see two characters that have hanged themselves.
Right.
And there's never a moment where it's like, oh, well, they were too weak. They couldn't handle this. You know, like, yeah, sure. Kiriyama says things along those lines, but he's never portrayed as anything but an anime villain. You're talking about this being manga. That dude is an anime villain.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, and so he's the only one who ever just has these outwardly shitty things to say about those characters. And there's something really interesting about that, right? Because it would be real easy for it to be some sort of plot point that the characters who don't kill themselves are the ones who are stronger or more determined. They're the ones who have more love for life or more of a will to go on. But it's never portrayed like that. It's really given as this idea of not they're too weak to play the game, but because they are strong enough to choose to not take the life of their friends or their classmates just to be part of this sick thing that is happening on this island. So I really love that. That's something that has always stuck with me for as long as I've watched this movie. And, you know, there are just a couple other things where I love the little twist at the end, how they kind of beat the system because, you know, it turns out the guy who went back learned to hack the necklaces and he can turn off the heart rate monitors and he's got a way to get them all out. And just so many of those little things. Watching this again, like I said, as many times as I've seen it, it has been a long time since I've watched it. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about this movie that just gets me, something new that gets me every single time. And like, you're right. There's not a lot of story. It's just a premise. And then we watch it play out. But that's to the betterment of this movie.
I do think that this is the kind of movie where less is more. And that we get only the backstories of a few. I think it works for a movie because it is very easy to go overboard and start giving us not enough backstory of any one, but getting everyone's backstory.
Right.
And then you start getting into the TV show sort of runtime where it's like, okay, we're splitting this up. And I felt like that's where the natural place for this thing to be was, because there were so many students, because there were so many obviously like amazing backstories here, because every single character was treated with respect, and it didn't matter who they were, what they had done, what we had just seen them do. It seemed like there was a story there that could be explored. And sometimes in storytelling, not telling the story and leaving mystery is the best thing to do. I will always say that the reason why Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite of all the Indiana Jones movies is because we get no backstory.
Right.
There's nothing to this guy. Why is he awesome? Because you just saw him do that thing. How can he do that? The fuck do you care?
Yeah.
Watch him do it again, right? That's the sort of thing that makes a movie from, oh, that was cool, to, wow, I got to watch that thing again. I want to keep watching this movie again, despite the fact that I've said it's too long and there's not enough story or commentary there. I want to keep watching it because it's compelling. There's something there. And maybe the more I watch this thing, the more I will fall in love with it. Right now, I'm in love with aspects of it. This is the one that suffers for me.
And if you want to know a little bit of backstory about this thing getting made, so this is based on a novel called Battle Royale that came out in 1999. I mean, they turned this thing from a book into a movie in a year. Like, or like that. That is how strongly Battle Royale took Japan by storm. Now, the book Battle Royale is over 600 pages long. Like,
that's a tome.
If this were to be made now, like if this movie had not been made in 2000, and granted, it being already made doesn't mean they won't do it again, somebody would look at a 600-page book and be like, this needs to be a series, a television series, or a couple of movies. Because when I have one summer, my goal was to sit down and read a translated version of Battle Royale, and I did. And you do get more of the backstories. What they seem to do in this movie was just pick the ones that, like you said, were going to be the most compelling in this video format. And so if you're ever just like, God, I need a brand new huge ass book to read, I do highly recommend it. It's one of those ones where they did a good job of hitting the high points, leaving enough connective tissue that it all made sense. But as is pretty much always the case, there's a lot more in the book. And so, and I have read the book too, which is probably part of my love for all of this. So I like I said, I feel like this is one of those things where we've done this I'm just going to turn into Chris Farley, like from that SNL sketch, right? Like I just want to like talk about amazing scenes from this movie. Like when Mitsuko, and the guy who's desperately in love with her, the only thing he's been using his GPS for is to find her, and she still just fucking kills him. Like, that shit is so good. And like,
I now heard that in Chris Farley's voice. Like, you remember that one part when he used the GPS to find her?
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah, like that's who I become when I'm talking about this movie, because it's just high points. It's just high points with a couple of really weird story building elements that I don't, even after all these years, I don't fully get. Like, but I kind of do. Like, now that I'm older, I understand him a little bit more. The scene where the teacher who's in charge of the whole thing brings the girl the umbrella, and he's just talking to her, and then he just kind of disappears into the woods because the protagonist guy is showing up. Like, that scene is super weird in the moment, and then it kind of all finishes up, and you're like, this is the one person that ever seemed to show him a modicum of respect. And so, for as much as he hates all of these kids and his kids hate him, this is like the one person in the world he seems to actually respect. And so that kind of comes together a little bit better. But in that moment, it's a really jarring scene that it's got these weird vibes. And again, this is a 20 years later thing. Everybody's super aware of all these different things. Like, you have this moment where you're like, is he in love with her? But there's also just, but I don't know. There's a difference there, right? In how people interact with teachers and where respect is shown and things like that. So I don't know, that stuff notwithstanding, I just absolutely love this.
And understandably so. So we could probably sit here and talk about this, even though I mean, I don't want to say I took a dump on this, but even though I wasn't glowing about this, I feel like we could probably spend the whole show talking about this. So let's just move on, right? And we're going to go to a section we're calling Teens. characters, right? Now, Daniel, we sometimes talk about economy of cast. This is not a cast that was very economical. No expense was spared here. Of all the characters here, you get to mention one of them first. Who are you talking about?
It's my number one, right? It's Mitsuko. I think that she is such an incredibly compelling character from the fact that the very first time we see her, she's already like murdering people. Like she took to this game like a fish to water. You know, when they very first get out, there's a kid who's already killing people with the crossbow. But then when we actually see who it is, he has no idea what he's doing. He got lucky and fired off a shot that hit somebody in the neck. He's out of his depth, doesn't make it much further. We see Mitsuko, and she is ready for this. She is built for this. She's not fucking around. She's got a comma, and that's it at first, and she starts going to town. So one, insane badass. Again, an anime character in this movie, 100%. What's amazing about her is they spend, and we talked about this when we talked about the stories, how perfectly these moments are dropped into the movie. We spend the entire movie making her seem like nothing but a psychopath who finally just got the chance to kill all these kids that she doesn't like. And then we finally get the backstory where we find out that very early in her life, she was made to believe that she wasn't worth any more than a handful of cash to the person who should find her to be the most valuable thing in the world, her own mother. And then it all makes sense. And it's so perfect because she is a person who forever has been led to believe that she is worthless, that she's nothing. So so all of this anger and rage that she's had building in her since she was a small child, in that flashback, at most she is 7 years old. At the absolute most, she's 7, and I'm leaning more 5, 6 in that flashback. And now she's what, 14, 15, right? So she's got half of her life, or 2/3 of her life, underneath her, of believing that she's worthless. So yeah, there's a lot of pent up rage and things that are going on in there. Also, and when it first happens, it seems like a ridiculous thing. When they get in the clear, the first thing she does is she finds somewhere where she can get a shower, do her makeup, and put on her booty shorts. And you're like, oh my God, like what is this girl's deal? And then you realize she was taught at a very young age that
this is your value.
This is your value. And she's learned to weaponize it. Fucking good on you. Like, if you have taken something that was going to be used against you that young in life and you have weaponized it, then hell yes. And now you're quite literally weaponizing it while you fight for your actual life, not just for like your ability to live a good life, but for your ability to actually exist. And you're still using all of that. She was so fucking cool. She's the only person who gave Kiriyama a decent, fair fight. When you look at when Kiriyama finally goes down, it's because he's blind. Yeah, he's been blinded by an explosion, and he still almost wins that fight. But 1-on-1, she almost gets him. Like it comes down to that great fucking, just Japanese samurai moment where it's who's gonna win, because we're right here. We're about to split a hair on what tips the scales, and she ends up on the losing side of that. Other than that, she's insanely badass. And so, yes, it's easy to look at her and say, well, she's crazy. And so she was just good at this because she's crazy. No, she's battle tested and finally got a chance to put it all to use. And I think that there is such a ridiculous amount of character development here in so much that's unspoken. In the scene where we find out that she's killed the two boys next to the pool, they're fully naked and she's not. So again, 100% weaponized what she's been told was the only thing that she had in this world that was worth anything was her body. I fucking love it. I love this character. I want a prequel movie that's about the shit she went through with her drunken ass mother to survive till she could get to this point in school, because I think that she was super compelling.
She is the most compelling character in this because by all accounts, she should have won.
Yes.
And the only reason why she doesn't win is because it's not fair.
Right.
The cards are stacked against them. They've got what is seemingly professionals coming in here and altering the course of the game.
Yeah.
And again, this is part of what I think is not really enough commentary there, but it's how little society gives them. It puts all the blame on them and then gives them none of the tools to get themselves out of their situations. She should have won. If this horrific game is something that they have to play, there should be rules, right? It would be like saying, all right, we're doing a Superman movie, but now all of a sudden, because this guy's wearing a lead vest, doesn't really matter that it's lead. Superman can see right through him. Like, what the fuck? Like, Superman's never been able to see through lead. He's got X-ray vision. It's X-ray. You can't fucking see through lead. Now all of a sudden he can do that, or he could only breathe like hot air. Can't be cold air. So you can't put out that fucking fire.
Right.
It's bullshit. Play by your fucking rules. So I think her outcome is directly affected by the fact that the adults don't show love, don't show care to their generation. And I think that is the story that most affected me. It's the story that I think is most effective because she's not the hero. Right. She's not presented as the hero either. But I think that more than any other culture in the world, and I've seen movies from many, many different places, the Japanese write women better than anyone.
Oh, yeah.
They're strong. They're badass. They don't depend. There is not a romantic interest for her in the entire movie, but she uses her quote feminine wiles to as a weapon.
Yeah.
And
100%.
and I love the fact that she is written as this strong character who's using this trauma, this really unfortunate backstory that she has to make herself stronger. And the only reason why she doesn't survive is because the cards were stacked against her. So that's who I would have gone with first. I'm glad that we talked about her first. I'm gonna go with, and I think I'm going to butcher this name, but Chiaki Kuriyama as Takako Chigusa. So Chigusa, for me, is the second strongest character.
She's the one who's the runner, right?
No. That's not Chigusa. Chigusa is Nanahara's love interest.
Got it. Okay.
Or am I wrong about that?
Man, look, it is hard. I tried to take notes so I could try to keep up with them. But yeah, I think you're right.
Well, that's who I'm going with.
Okay.
All right. She is, along with Shuya or Nanahara, whatever you want to call him, because he goes by both names in the movie. She is, I think, the most pure of heart. Right? She's the Sailor Moon here. And there is something strong about that sort of character where she can show it in the midst of this societal breakdown where I'm not going to disagree that the younger generation is disrespectful and the younger generation is all the things that they say they are. It's not their fault, but that is what the truth doesn't change,
Right.
She manages to be better than everyone.
Yeah.
And she manages to rise above and say all the things that we all should value. I have. And even you who are, wagging your finger at this younger generation, you don't have these values either, though you claim to actually, value these things. I am the thing. She is better than everyone else.
Right.
Because she does everything, she survives while never compromising herself.
Yeah. Yeah, she's great. No. I was just gonna say I was gonna agree with you on that. Like she absolutely gets through this whole thing without ever losing herself in it.
Right. And I don't know what it is about her character in particular, because Shuya doesn't either. He never once goes down that road of like, okay, well, I'm going to backstab this guy, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. But there is something special about that performance. And maybe it's the innocence that she brought to the role. I don't know, but there's a strength there, which is different but equal to Mitsuko's strength that I really, really appreciated.
Yeah, it's incredible that, what, like I said, as much as I was talking about like there's a reverence to the way that they handle these students who decide to not play the game and and they kill themselves. There's also an equal, not even equal. There's a greater reverence kind of given to this character who never slumps down into doing all this. Like, she literally just plays it as a game of survival. Like, she's just trying to make it and to kind of see, how it plays out, and if she can just stay alive, right? Just survive somehow. Like, that's her entire thing. And so they do a really good job with keeping her you're right, the Sailor Heart. She's the pure of heart, the Sailor Moon, pure of heart character. There you go. I said Sailor Heart. Pure of heart, yeah. Sailor Moon character in this. And they do a great job with that. I really liked her. I want to talk about the teacher, Kitano.
Yes.
Who kind of sets this whole thing into motion, because we get a lot of weird angles on him. He is a character that we get a reason why he's so just disillusioned and disgusted by this generation, right? Because the first time we see him, a random kid just runs by with a knife and slices his leg / ass cheek open.
Right.
Just for no fucking reason. This is after his class just left him a note that said, didn't come to class because we didn't want to, and he's still trying to just kind of keep it together. And then he comes back and we find out he's the one who's kind of in charge of all of this. And he's the one running this whole thing. But we get these different angles on him, because then we get him when he first shows up and he blows up one of the kids' heads right away. And so you're like, oh, okay. So this guy's just like, he's over it. Like, he's disillusioned about everything. But then we get that umbrella scene. And you see that there is still that soft part of him. Then you get that scene where his kid calls him and just shits all over him. and doesn't know what he's doing. Not shitting on him because he's running a game where teenagers are killing each other. Just shits on him for like being at work and like being him, right? Like we constantly get, and then at the end, he knows for a fact that Kawada did not actually kill these other twos. Doesn't make these other two, doesn't make him confirm the kills. He's like, that's it, pack it up, game's over. We've got a winner, go home. And he gets them all out so that they can have their happily ever after. And then just takes it in the chest. I mean, it provokes getting shot. Like he's done with life. Provokes getting shot by pulling a water pistol on Nanahara. He pulls the water pistol on and provokes getting shot, is ready for it to be over. And then in just one of the, then in a moment that made him seem like a damn Terminator, he's got 6 bullets in his chest and he just sits up and walks over to the couch so he can answer his phone for one last fuck you to everybody. Because this is a guy who nothing has ever gone his way. And now that he's seen that somebody deserving has won this game, he's done with it. He needed a moment where he could see that good could prevail, that somebody could win this game by just being a better human, not a better murderer, not a physically stronger person, but just being a better human being. And he saw that. So he has seen everything he needs to see now. And there's a lot in this one guy, and I really like that.
I really liked his character. As a teacher, I identified with him a lot. Because while I would never end up where he is, overseeing this sort of game with my former students, I have in the past and in the present felt like, dude, I'm giving you my all and you're giving me nothing.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? I've felt that before. And there is very little in life that is that disappointing. Where like I have stretched out my hand and said, like, dude, I'm giving you a chance here. All you got to do is reach out and take my hand, and like I'll take you somewhere. You know, you'll do something.
Right.
And it doesn't happen. And then I end up feeling like a fool. What I don't see myself ever doing, and this serves almost as kind of like the, the Mr. Vernon from Breakfast Club sort of thing, is like, I can't ever become this guy.
Right.
I can't ever become him. He's as much a reflection of me as a shadow.
Right. There's a cautionary tale.
Yeah. And I really, really dig that. I like that there's very little to redeem him. Everything that redeems him is in his past, except for the umbrella.
Yeah.
Like you've talked about. That's a great, great scene and shows that there's still some humanity left in him. I will say, I did not like the Terminator, the Michael Myers sitting up. For me, that was a step too far. I saw that and I was like, oh, well, what the fuck are we doing here?
Fair. Absolutely fair.
Yeah, that one, I feel like you could have very easily made that phone call before and lost nothing.
Yeah.
Or not had the phone call at all. Let's be honest. All right. I don't feel like it gave us anything new to the character. His home life sucked. His work life sucked. And this is why he became who he was. No better than the students that he claims are destroying society. So that was a great, great performance, because it's very easy to play him as just pure evil. and he
Right.
wasn't that. He was very much humanized. He was very much a I don't want to call him a likable character, but he was a character that you can sympathize with. So definitely that. I do want to walk back something. So Chigusa is the runner.
Okay.
Nakagawa is the
There we go.
Noriko is the character that I meant to talk about earlier. Everything I said applies. It's just to Nakagawa, not Chigusa. Chigusa is the runner. Her story is amazing, but she's not who I'm going to mention. If I could talk about a third one, it would be her. Who I'm going to mention actually dies almost right away, and it's Yoshitoki Kuninobu.
Yes.
Shuya's best friend, right? So he's the one who slices Kitano at the beginning of the movie. And he's the first one to die. Understandably so.
Right.
Maybe not understandably, but I get why he's the first one to die. And yet his best parts are after he's dead.
Yep.
Because his death, number one, sets the tone for what is about to happen, right? And it gives us that sort of like classic Kurosawa blood spatter.
Yeah.
On top of that, on top of setting the tone and his ghost being ever present in these games, the flashbacks that we get with him are what, to me, make Shuya such a great character. When you can affect not just your own story, but the hero's story to such a level, that means that, number one, your character is written really, really well. And number two, your performance is really, really good.
Yeah.
He makes himself like what I'm thinking when they finally get to the island and all this stuff, happens, and he's the first one to die. I'm like, yeah, kid was a dick. He sliced his teacher open. As the story goes on, and you start finding out more about all these other students, so shit, everyone's got a backstory. Why didn't he have a backstory?
Right.
And when you get it, you're like, fuck. Why would he respect his teacher? His teacher didn't respect him. Why would he be any better than what society told him he was? It's not going to make a difference either way. I really came to respect his character and almost look up to his character. I saw him slicing Kitano open at the beginning of the movie almost as not an act of defiance, but as an act of self-respect.
Right.
And there's so much to that character and his performance and him talking about Nakagawa that really humanized him in the same way that Kitano was humanized through his whole backstory. I really his character endeared himself to me.
Yeah, it's really weird how that kind of works out, right? Because the first time you see him, and you're just like, oh God, like he's the one who immediately kind of makes you understand why they went this way, and then you're right, and then it plays out, and what you end up getting with his backstory, and then looking back on the fact that he sliced open the teacher is just like, yes, it's extreme that he slashed his teacher, but also you end up looking back on it, it's like, man, also like kids do stupid shit like when they're backed into a corner. Right? Like kids act out. And when you're in this situation where acting out is the norm, which is what we're led to believe here, right? These students didn't come to class because they didn't want to. There's no, if you actually want to put yourself in a position to show an act of defiance, then you've got to go above and beyond. And so we end up by the end of it realizing that he was put into a position where he felt like this was something he had to do. He didn't just do it because he was a dick. He felt like that was the next logical step in proving himself as a person, as somebody who was worthy of respect in the eyes of this adult. You know, one of the things that as teachers, you always like, I feel like there's always one teacher every year that's new or newer that you have to teach this lesson to. Like, I feel like I've had to teach this lesson to people all the time. It's like, kids don't owe you shit just because you're older than them.
100%.
Kids don't owe you a damn thing because you're older than them. Like, kids will owe you respect when you show that you respect them. When you show them that they're loved and respected, then yes, then they should reciprocate that. But just being older than someone doesn't mean that they owe you a damn thing. And so he finds a way to prove to himself that he's worthy. And yeah, it's extreme, but when defiance is the norm, then extremism becomes defiance, right? Like when that slider is moving over, then you have to stay ahead of it to do these things. So it really is an interesting shift that we get in him. Especially, he dies before the game even starts. He's used to prove a point, and so he ends up being one of the most fascinating characters in the movie.
Yep, absolutely. So there's really only one thing left to talk about before we rate this, and it was the very first thing that I mentioned, which is filmmaking, right? So from a filmmaking perspective, right? So we're talking about like the art of cinema here. How do you feel about this movie?
Okay. I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction because you're the one who gets like the technical stuff, right? You're going to be able to talk about all that. So when I saw that you had done this here, I saved something I was going to talk about in story to bring down here.
Okay.
So from a filmmaking perspective, and this may just be I'm 20 years into this and where I am with my political views. When we look at social commentary here, I think that one of the things that you can pull from the way that this story progresses, a theme here is about the dangers of capitalism. Stick with me for just a second, right? You hit on it as you were talking about Mitsuko, and you were talking about how in a world where everything was fair and equal, then she should have won. What we get out of this movie is a game where the deck is stacked for certain people to win. So much so that they bring in these ringers, and that one of whom immediately is like, no, fuck you. This isn't even my bag. Like, give me my bag.
Wild that they let that happen.
Yeah. And they were just like, oh, our bad. But like, that's how it works, right? Like that's one of the things about capitalism. The people who end up winning or doing the best are the people who are given the advantages from the jump, even though everyone is told it's a level playing field and everybody has the exact same. Everybody's born with, everybody's born just an equal American, and everybody can do the same thing, and you can be whatever you want to be. But then there's some people who are given an automatic weapon and some people who are given a pot lid, and that what you're dealt at birth, or in this case, in the very beginning of this game, weighs so heavily on your ability to do well that not everybody has a chance to win. I'm sorry. If all you're given is a flashlight and a pair of binoculars, you really don't stand much of a chance against somebody who's given an automatic weapon or a hand crossbow, something that's actually lethal.
Mhm.
It's the exact same way that, you know, being born with a certain name or your parents having a certain dollar amount in their bank account puts you on a much different path forward than somebody who is just normally born, right? Like our children are just born to just parents, right? We're just out there doing the damn thing, and we're doing everything we can to give them all of those roads, but there are certain paths that just aren't available to them because of who we are and what we have. And so it's something that's dawned on me kind of slowly as I've looked at these things. But I do think that the filmmakers there made some of these choices to show that as a theme in this without it being super heavy handed. And I do love that.
That is something that I haven't quite figured out whether it's featured too much or not enough. And that for me, I think, is kind of the crux with this, is that I feel like there is either not enough or too much of certain things in the story element. I think that what is here is amazing. What we get from the screenwriting perspective, right? So to keep it firmly focused on the filmmaking, right? This was written by someone who I think is brilliant. And what we're seeing is what if you're on my same social media algorithm, you see a lot of like that late stage capitalism, right? You hear
Right.
that term a lot depending on what your social media algorithm looks like, right?
Just
And that's
butts.
exactly
It's just butts and shitting on capitalism.
that's it. You got it, right? We're on the same algorithm. Yeah, man. I love the way that this story is used to comment on that.
Yeah.
I love the way that we see how there's nothing that you, as part of the 99%, can do to get yourself out of this situation. I love that. The more technical side of the filmmaking is what to me is much more fascinating and what kept me engaged the whole time. The lighting in this is phenomenal. I don't know what the budget for this movie is, but if you told me that it was $500 million, I would believe it. Because number one, film is expensive.
Right.
And this was made in the days before digital. And so this movie's long.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what stayed on the cutting room floor. The film itself, like the colors in the film are gorgeous. And I haven't read up on it, but if I were a betting man, I would say they used Fujifilm for this, and Fujifilm has just the most beautiful colors in the world. The luscious greens that you get in this movie from the foliage, that's Fujifilm. I love the way that this thing looks, because even when you think you're going to get that like beautiful hero shot where you've got this like gorgeous portraiture of this person up here, you never really get it. It always looks a little ugly. And I like it. It's a beautiful sort of ugly. It's not like I really took a dump on Jenny Penn. Was that the name of the movie?
Yes.
Did not like the way that movie looked. This one, total opposite. And there's, I think, intentionality with the way that like just everything is in focus. They want you to see fucking everything here. And that's not always pretty. Sometimes you want to just see like this beautiful portrait of someone, and you kind of never get to see that. You're looking at everything, you're looking at the whole world, because that's kind of what the commentary is here, that everything is connected, and that we can say, yep, this is the problem, but it's not, because that's connected to something else. The music in this,
oh my God,
fucking perfect. Every single moment was accompanied by the perfect musical cue. It's classic and it's contemporary all at once.
Yeah, I did go look that up. It's actually the Warsaw Philharmonic scored this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, it to me, that's like one of the things where I was like, after a while, I kind of realized like, this is like Steven Spielberg level. I'm feeling exactly what I am being told to feel.
Right.
And it's always, I mean, music is the thing that does it for you. Sound design is everything. This is the movie's strongest point. And I don't want to go too much longer, because we've already been going for an hour and 15, but the technical aspects of this movie are the reason why this is going to score so high for me.
And the director of this, Kinji Fukasaku. Sorry, like we're trying. We're trying. Anyway, this was his last movie.
I read that. That's
the
crazy.
last movie. He directed one scene in the sequel, which is not nearly as good. I don't not recommend it, but also like it's okay. But he only directed one scene in that sequel. But this was his final movie. Like this was his swan song. Like he made this and he was like, I'm good now. I mean, he'd been making movies since the 60s when he made this. But it like he was good. Like he realized, it was like, this is it. And I'm good now. And he just moved on. And yeah, really is. It's incredible. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the score, because if you hadn't, that was going to be the one last thing that I did. So, I mean, there you have it, right? We've hit all the high points. We've told you, you probably got a feeling about how this is going, but it is time for us to rate this thing. So if you are new to the show or you need a quick reminder, we never rate a movie against others. Yes, we talked about Hunger Games and Death Race. I've talked about the book. We're not comparing this movie to any of those things. We are just looking at what it's given us. And so we create a unique rating system for every movie that we do here. So Dave, out of a possible 5 useless paper fans, what do you give Battle Royale?
I'm going to give Battle Royale 4 paper fans. This is a movie that is made by someone who is a master of his craft. This movie's excellent. There are very few things that I would say are wrong with this movie, and none of them have to do with the direction.
Right.
None of them have to do with directing. None of them have to do with the technical aspects. It all comes from being either not enough or too much.
Yeah.
And
fair.
I think ultimately it goes down to the studio, because this is a studio picture, right? You've got that Toho sign right at the beginning of this thing,
yeah.
right? And as a lifelong fan of Godzilla, you see that and you're like, fucking Godzilla. I know what's going on here. We're getting the real deal, right? It's like seeing the Universal logo come up before a monster movie. You're like,
right.
You done gave me Dracula. I can trust you, right? So that's ultimately who I think is to blame here. I think that there wasn't a clear vision from Toho as to what they wanted. Or maybe there was a clear vision of what they wanted, and there was a clear vision of what the writer wanted. There was a clear vision of what the director wanted. And I think that might be the issue here. I would love to read the manga. I would love to read the novel and see how I feel about it, because maybe that changes it. But where it stands right now, maybe after another watch or two, maybe that bumps up to 4.5, maybe even a 5. Useless paper fans one day. But for now, I think I'm going to stick with 4.
All right. Well, I'm not too far from you. Right. I did refer to this thing at the top as a masterpiece, and I do feel like it is that. I do feel like this movie is incredible, but it's not perfect, right? So I'm going to go 5 useless paper fans, which 5 out of 5 is nothing to sneeze at.
No.
But there are maybe 1 or 2 things that I would tweak in this, and I think that you kind of you hit it on. It needs a little bit more, it needs a little bit less, right? You've got to do something there. Like, you need to cram a little bit more into this 2 hours, or you need to make it a little bit shorter than just over 2 hours. So I'm going 5 out of 5 on this one. I recommend this one to anybody who will ever listen to me talk about it. I love this movie. I'm so glad that we finally got to do it.
Yes, absolutely. So there you have it. That's going to be 4.5 useless paper fans. And I'm not mad about that. I'm not mad at all. In fact, I can't wait to watch this thing again.
Yeah, it's great.
It is. It absolutely is. And so this was Daniel's idea for us to watch Battle Royale. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And when we decided that this was what we were going to do, I followed up with, well, you know what? We should stay in Asia for another week and make it a double feature. And so next week, we're going to do Versus.
Oh, yes.
I haven't seen Versus in about, maybe it's been 10 years.
I think I'm right around 10 years. Yeah, that sounds about right.
That is such an outstanding movie. I can't wait to talk about this thing. Now, I mean, my opinion could be totally changed. I don't know. But I am so excited to talk about Versus.
Yeah, if you've enjoyed how wild it was talking about this one that was gritty, just make sure you tune in next week and hear what we have to say about Versus, because it is a whole different creature. Make sure you head over to shiverpod.com, where you can find links to all of our social media. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, all of those things at ShiverPod. You can find us there. I've been trying, school year's winding down. I've been getting more active on the Instagram again. The end of the year kind of kicked our ass, but we're here now. We're about ready to hit summer. So make sure you check us out. And thanks to everybody who's been noticing that we're revitalizing and interacting with us on Instagram to get us back into those algorithms.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.